Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So my 2013 CRF250L was getting into the red zone on the chain wear indicator, and also the chain was experiencing some kinking even when properly lubricated, and the front sprocket was starting to show some wear. So in this video I'll be showing you how to replace the chain and the front and rear sprocket without using any specialty tools. What you will need are 10mm, 12, 17, 19, and 24mm wrenches. Large adjustable wrenches could also be substituted in place of the 19 and 24mm wrenches. You'll need a 6mm hex socket and ratchet. I would highly recommend the hex socket over the Allen wrench to lower your chances of stripping the bolt. You also need a flat blade screwdriver, an 8 and 10mm socket and ratchet, either deep well or shallow well with an extension, some channel lock pliers and a few washers, a 24mm socket, and a torque wrench capable of 65 foot-pounds. You need a measuring device for chain slack, and also some sort of cutting tool and something to cut on. I used a Dremel with a cutoff wheel, and it worked surprisingly well to cut off the old chain. The replacement parts I used are the DID 520 VX3 X-ring chain. I'm keeping it stock with the 14-tooth front sprocket and 40-tooth rear sprocket, both by JT Sprockets. Affiliate links for all these products are in the description below. I would really appreciate it if you would use those links if you're going to buy from Amazon. I'm not affiliated with any of these manufacturers. It's just what I chose to use for my personal motorcycle. Let's get started by removing the two 8mm bolts holding on the front sprocket cover, and also the two 8mm bolts holding on the chain guard. After the bolts are out, slide the chain guard forward to remove it. If you are replacing the rear sprocket, you need to go ahead and loosen the 6 17mm bolts holding on the rear sprocket. This is done by holding the 6mm hex nut in place while using the box end of the 17mm wrench to loosen the nut. This particular part was filmed after the fact because I was initially trying to do it with an Allen key with the tire off of the bike, and I ended up stripping 2 of the bolts, so be extremely careful with this. At this point, all you want to do is make sure that each of the nuts are broken loose. Now it's time to take the 12mm wrench and loosen the lock nut on the adjusting bolt. Then with a 10mm wrench, turn the adjusting bolt clockwise to move it away from the adjusting plate on each side of the bike. Use the 24mm wrench to loosen the axle nut. You may have to hold the axle still with the 19mm wrench on the other side. Now that everything's loose, it's time to lift the rear tire off the ground. I usually do this just by picking up the bike and setting it on a 5-gallon bucket, but if you have a motorcycle jack or anything else, that will work just fine as well. After completely removing the axle nut and the adjusting plate on the right side, slide the rear axle completely out, then take the chain off of the rear sprocket. With the sprocket nuts already broken loose, it's a breeze to remove each of the 6 bolts, then out with the old and in with the new sprocket. Then replacing each of the 6 bolts with a washer and nut on the backside, then tightening them back down with the 17mm wrench and the 6mm hex socket. And to prevent stripping, hold the hex bolt in place and torque down with the 17mm wrench. Now for the fun part of cutting the chain. Make sure that you are wearing safety glasses if you are operating power tools, because this chain is at the end of its service life and will just go to the scrap yard. I'm not worried about damaging it in any way, so basically remove it by any way you can get it cut into. Now make sure that your transmission is in gear, and using the 10mm socket, remove the 2 bolts holding on the front sprocket retainer plate, then twist and remove the plate with your fingers. With the transmission in neutral, remove the old chain, then you can go ahead and remove the old sprocket. Now with the chain off, it makes it a little easier to check the condition of the drive chain slider, and here is the wear limit indicator. As you can see, my old front sprocket was showing some signs of wear. It is recommended that you do replace both the front and rear sprockets anytime the chain is replaced. So even if you don't have significant wear, it can cause a new chain to wear out faster than normal. After a little degreaser to clean things up, it's time to reinstall the new front sprocket. When reinstalling the retainer plate, you can see here that it's impossible to put it in backwards. So I'll spin it around 180 degrees, slide it onto the splines, and twist to line up the holes. Now reinstall the 2 10mm bolts and tighten them down. Make sure your transmission is in gear during this to keep it from spinning. Now the front sprocket replacement is complete. Moving back to the rear wheel, Reinstall the rear wheel collars. You may want to apply a little bit of grease around where they contact the seal. Then lift the rear wheel into place, making sure the brake rotor slides in between the pads, and reinstall the rear axle. Make sure that the 4 marks on the chain adjuster are facing down when you reinstall the axle. If everything is lined up correctly, it should slide right into place. Reinstall the right side chain adjuster, making sure those reference marks are facing down, then reinstall the axle nut. Don't tighten it all the way yet, as you still need to slide it forward before you put the chain on. Put the bike in neutral so that the front sprocket can free spin, then start routing the chain from the front sprocket around to the rear sprocket. Your chain should be able to fit on the next groove on the rear sprocket. If it can't, you may have to screw in your chain adjuster slightly. I'm going to be using the clip type connecting link that was included with a DID chain. Inside the bag are 4 X-rings, some grease, the link itself, the side plate, and the clip. Install 2 of the X-rings onto the link, then generously coat the link with grease. Slide the connecting link into position on the chain, just to make sure it was well lubricated before sealing everything up. I applied a little more grease to the end of the link. Install the 2 remaining X-rings onto the connecting link, then install the side plate. Before being able to install a clip, the side plate has to be pressed into position. This can be done using a stack of washers and some channel lock pliers. Only press it just enough to expose the groove on each side of the connecting link, then install the clip. You can either use a flat blade screwdriver like I do here, or some needle nose pliers to squeeze it into position. Just make sure that the closed end of the clip travels in the direction of the chain. Before adjusting chain tension, put the bike back on flat ground, supported by the kickstand. The spec is between 1 and 1 3/8 inch travel in the middle of the chain. To adjust it, use the 10mm wrench to loosen the adjusting bolts on each side of the swing arm. Using the reference marks on the adjusting plate, make sure the axle is aligned as you adjust for proper chain tension. Once each side has been adjusted for proper chain tension and axle alignment, hold the 10mm bolt in place and use a 12mm wrench to tighten the lock nut. As you can see, my new chain is well within the green zone on the wear indicator. Now to tighten the axle nut, use the 19mm wrench to hold the axle in place while using the 24mm socket and torque wrench set to 65 foot-pounds. The only thing left to do now is to reinstall the front sprocket cover with the 2 8mm bolts, then the chain guard starting with a slot on the left side, then 2 more 8mm bolts. And that's it. So this chain does come pre-lubricated, but for routine maintenance every 500 miles I use this DuPont Chain Saver wax-based lubricant. Again, link in the description below. Because it is a wax-based product and has self-cleaning technology, just spray it on all 4 sides of the chain, wipe off any excess or overspray, then wait 30 minutes before you go riding. Hope this tutorial was helpful. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and drop any comments or questions you have in the comment section below.